Hey guys, welcome back for another reaction. Today I'll be checking out 10 surprising facts about Austria. Let's get into this.
Austria is a country that may not come up in the media all the time, but it is an
Yeah.
important place with a fascinating culture and people, and of course history. And today here on FTD Facts, we are looking at the
Beautiful
great
there.
country of Austria and finding out what is interesting about this country. It is a country that has its own unique story and has made its own individual contributions to the
Wow.
world.
Look at
A
that
place and
view.
people who have their own way of doing things that may be different from the rest of Europe. Hey everybody, what's going on? Dave Walpole here. Welcome to FTD Facts, the channel where we usually talk about people, cultures, and places from all around the world. Now, yeah, we're talking about Austria because, well, we've done some videos on Germany in the last little bit. We've done stuff on other European countries, and for this video, actually quite a bit of you guys actually recommended that we talk about Austria, so this is our time to actually do it. Now, keep in mind when we do these videos, guys, sometimes we leave out facts, so if there's anything that we left out, be sure to let us know down here in the comments section below. Also, just to remind you guys, this episode is brought to you by Grammarly.com. They're our sponsor, and I'll talk about that more at the end of this video. So let's get rolling with it, guys. Let's find out what is fascinating about this really unique country known as Austria and what it is definitely doing different from the rest of the places on the planet. So when it comes to Austria, it might be a country that is very similar to Germany, but that doesn't mean that they are German, because the country itself has its own borders and land that stretches out to 83,879 kilometers square, making the country the 113th largest country in the world.
Awesome.
And throughout these borders, the people of Austria have their own unique rules, and they've got their own different types of people. And when it comes to population, they have roughly 8,794,000 people, ranking 96th in the world, with a population density of 104 people per square kilometer. Now, of course, being next to Germany, the main language is German, coming in at 88.4%. And about 2.4% speak Serbian, 2.3% speak Turkish, and 1.3% Croatian. And of course, there are many other different languages that are under the 1%.
Are they
However, with all these people combined,
what?
approximately 81% of all these people are straight up Austrians. So that's just a basic idea, guys. When you go, oh yeah, you're probably from Germany, no, they're different. Austrians are different from Germans. Now, we did talk about land size, but when it does come to the land, Austria is known to be a very mountainous country, with most of the country being a part of the Alps. And actually about only 32% of the country is under 1,640 feet above sea level, which basically means most of the country is up very high. But what is the highest point of Austria? Well, that goes to Mount Grossglockner, which is the highest mountain in Austria. Coming in at 12,461 feet, she is actually the highest point in the Alps east of Brenner Pass. And although people have been living in Europe for quite a long time, and a lot of Europe was discovered way back in the day, this mountain was not documented until 1561. So with all these people living up in very high mountainous areas, one thing that Austrians are known for is alpine skiing. What is alpine skiing? Well, basically it's downhill skiing. That's right, taking skis and going downhill. It's my favorite thing to do. As a matter of fact, the people of Austria are known from all around the world for being great downhill skiers, with skiing being the most prominent sport within the country. And one thing that's really important about skiing, Austria is pretty much the place where it invented modern-day alpine skiing. This is because the design for steel edges on skis was invented in 1928 in Austria. As well, when it comes to skiing, one thing that's really amazing about Austria is the little villages that you can go to for skiing. They just look so quaint and quiet, and
it's very colorful.
Little villages that you can go to. And one of the most famous places that you can go for skiing is Aalborg. And it's not just famous because of skiing, but this is also the region where Hans Schneider invented modern-day ski techniques almost a century ago. Now, okay, we could talk about skiing in Austria for a long time because it's the most prominent sport in the country and there's just so much history to it. But moving right along, one thing that's fascinating about Austria is that on January 1st of 1995, the country did decide to join the European Union. However, although they're part of the European Union, they're actually not a part of NATO. One of the reasons is because when Austria became neutralized after the USSR and the Allied countries removed their occupation in 1956, Austria pretty much from there on decided that they just wanted to be a neutral country because of the issues that happened in World War II. They just didn't want to be a part of anything bad that would happen in the future.
I'm sure.
Therefore, the country swore itself into neutrality and remained from war. Now, Austria, as a matter of fact, fact,
That's
she
definitely a
stands
good
at
idea.
6th in the world when it comes to economic complexity. The country makes $141 billion in exports and about $146
That's a
billion
lot.
in imports. And comparing
Jeez.
Austria to other countries that we've talked about here on FTD Facts, one unique thing about Austria is that it doesn't really have a prime import or export. That's right, the country seems to export and import a little bit of everything. Because, for example, their
Really?
highest percentage of imports is cars, coming in at 5.6%. And out of all the imports and
Really?
exports, Austria is labeled as one of the wealthiest countries in the entire world. As a matter of
I
fact,
think I've
in
heard this
2014,
one, yeah.
it was listed as 21st in the world when it came to the Human Development Index scale. And this is probably due to the fact that, Austria's just been a great country that's been around for such a long time, and it's been such an important place when it comes to history. And diving into this history slightly, when we talk about the country's flag, it is actually one of the oldest in the world. Although it was officially adopted in 1918, the style of the flag has been thought to have been adopted by the coat of arms of the Babenberg dynasty, which is roughly around the 12th
Oh, I
and
didn't
13th
know that.
century. And diving even further into this country's past, the country has had multiple days in history of independence, even dating back to 976 AD when it became the Margraviate of Austria. But however, its official year of foundation was in 1804 when it became known as the Austrian Empire. As well as diving into their
So yeah, isn't Europe is a whole country before, and then it just like divided into different countries? Am I right? Or I did not read that correctly before, but yeah. Austria is recently one of the most interesting and I think beautiful country that I really want to visit soon. And yeah, I remember someone asked me recently, it's like, what's your dream? And I was like, well, I just want to live somewhere in Europe, in the middle of nowhere, like, and I'll just have a beautiful mountain around, and then I just have a small cabin or small house, and then there's a lake, and then there's a lot of trees. I could just go anywhere. But yeah, it's a very peaceful living, I think, and I'll be contented, even though it's just like that. So yeah, very nice and peaceful. Well, yeah, let's continue this.
history, Austria is a country that has provided a lot of great musical composers from the classical era. You have great composers such as Mozart, and even though
Oh.
Beethoven was born in Germany, he lived in many years in Austria composing music. And on top of that, there's also
Really?
Johann Strauss, Joseph Haydn, and Franz Schubert. And the reason for this is because Vienna was such a huge, important center or hub for music way back in the day. And actually, if we're going to talk
That's
about
why.
Vienna, we should probably mention some really cool, interesting features about this place. For example, it is home to one of, if not the world's largest emerald. This is the Emerald
Wow.
Argentarian, which is 2,860 carats, and it might have been carved out of a Colombian mine in
That's a
1641,
lot.
but it is now on display at the Imperial Treasury in Vienna, Austria.
Holy
And also when it
shit.
comes to Vienna, the city itself is pretty much completely a UNESCO zone. Although
Oh.
Austria may have 10 UNESCO zones all over the country, with 9 of them being cultural and 1 being natural, which basically when it comes to its natural zone, that's the primeval forests of the country, Vienna is listed as one of the most important cities and listed as a UNESCO zone because of its importance in history. And one thing, as we mentioned
yeah,
before,
I
is
guess.
this was a place that provided so many great composers in history. And to break it down, when it comes to Vienna, about 371 hectares or 3.71 kilometers square of the city is considered a protected UNESCO zone. Of this city,
That's
about
actually big.
75% of it is owned by individual people, and 18% of it is publicly owned, while 7% is owned by the Roman Catholic Church. And you know what? I don't really want
How
this
many
video to just be
churches in
focused
there?
on Vienna, but there is one thing that Vienna does have that no other country can ever claim, and I mean, Austria can claim it too because it's, within Austria. And that is the Tiergarten Schönbrunn Zoo, which is the
Oh
world's
yeah.
oldest zoo. And not only that, but it's also special because it's one of the few zoos in the world that can house the giant pandas. As well, Austria can claim that this zoo had the first panda to be birthed by natural insemination in all of Europe. And this was baby
That's
panda Fu,
cool.
which happened on August 23rd of 2007. And on top of that, Austria can also claim that they
That's actually a really, really interesting looking zoo. Like at first it kinda looks like something like important. I mean zoo is important of course, but like it's like a government center or like government place or like museum, actually museum. It looks more museum to me than zoo, but yeah,
had
actually
the
a nice
first
looking
elephant
zoo.
born in captivity on July 14th of 1906. However, as for the zoo itself, it opened in 1752, like I said, making it the
That's a
world's
long
oldest
time.
zoo. But one thing that's really fascinating about this is that there was also a zoo that existed since 1540 in the same grounds before this zoo was ever created. So this place was just destined to have a zoo there. I don't know. And now I'm going to jump off the Vienna topic because I've been talking about Vienna for so long, but it is a very interesting city. But I got to talk about one
Very
thing that
historic.
Austria has that no other country can claim. And that is the country has the
Ice
world's
cavern?
longest ice cavern. This is the Austrian Isreichenwald Caves, which are natural limestone caves, and they are
Oh,
sometimes referred to as the
that
world
looks
of the ice
scary in
giants
there.
because this long cave goes approximately 42 kilometers deep. And although it was officially
That's
discovered in
scary.
1879, locals did know of the cave before, but they refused to explore it because they thought it was an entrance to hell. Either way, this fascinating
Scary.
natural structure attracts over 20,000 tourists a year and is really quite an amazing thing to see. So that is just a look at the great country known as Austria, a country that there is just not enough time to talk
It's
about when it comes to not
beautiful.
only its culture,
Look
but
at
its
that.
history. Which reminds me,
Hmm.
guys, if we forgot anything, be sure to let us know down there in the comments section below because we
That was a very, very informative video, and yeah, I now have more knowledge about Austria. And I do love Austria a lot, just like how I love Germany. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.